O'Brien.
What's going on, everybody? This is Jacob Shoup. You're watching the Tom O'Brien Show. I hope you all had a fantastic holiday for Easter, and if you celebrated Passover, that you had a nice Seder. It's a good time. Strangely enough, Pope Francis passed away today. So they will be embarking on that new journey to figure out who the new Pope will be. Pretty interesting chain of events there. There's a few interesting candidates that they might pick. A lot of them very conservative regarding the Vatican Church, the Catholic Church. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what happens with that. Let's take a look right now. Not a ton of volume today, but we are in the red. Additionally, your VIX is not insanely high. I mean, you're maybe up 19% at max today, trading around $36. You're 34.89 in the VIX, okay, up 17.67%. This has remained relatively elevated for quite some time. Now, although we don't have a ton of volume today, it doesn't seem like there's a ton of panic. There's not a ton of panic. It suggests you can continue to kind of go a little bit lower until a bottom is kind of formed. I think we could, in theory, see something like that with earnings this week, right? Obviously, the biggest out of all is going to be Tesla. And now Tesla's off nearly 7%. This is on okay volume. I believe they have earnings, yes, tomorrow after the bell. They're going to be in tough shape. You have Novartis, you have GE, Verizon, RTX, Chubb, Lockheed Martin. Things like Verizon probably be okay. I mean, the same way Netflix was, right? They're not necessarily exposed to tariffs. I mean, Netflix had phenomenal earnings. And let's see that. 1.78% today. They had killer earnings. I mean, it kind of makes sense, right? I mean, they're not really exposed to tariffs or the uncertainty in any major way. I could see this being absolutely some kind of place to kind of park some money. How many people are in my age bracket are going to get rid of Netflix because of recession? I mean, I think people my age group have been strapped for cash anyways for the past few years, and they still have it. I think it would take something pretty substantial for them to go into, something along the lines of having to get rid of something like Netflix. That kind of austerity, I just think, there'd be bigger problems. You have the SPY trading off 3.15% right now, about 16.59 points at 509.80. I definitely see a testing of the lows, and I do think that the earnings this week, and it's not so much going to be, what happened in Q1, although I think for things like Tesla, that's going to be, pretty significant problem for them. But it's a forward guidance issue, right? So we'll see what happens. RTX, I'm curious to see how they're doing because they are adding to our ground-to-air protection. Yeah, they're off 3.11% right now. Yeah, I mean, really, I think you're going to see a lot of these companies just having to suspend some kind of guidance, right? I mean, especially like in the consumer realm, right? I mean, RTX kind of gets away from that. GE Aerospace might get away from that. It was really good that they decoupled from GE. Verizon, I think, will probably be okay. What I would say for RTX and Lockheed as well, I mean, any of the good news for RTX are about contracts that they got, 5 years ago, and they're just now starting to kind of push it out. I mean, there's a lot of competition now between with RTX, LMT, Lockheed Martin. I mean, you have Anduril, you have Rocket Labs, you have ASTS, right? I mean, 3M even is releasing their earnings. So much. But the point being is even some of these defense companies are no longer the only dogs in the park, right? So it'll be kind of interesting to see. I have no position either way on RTX or Lockheed Martin. I like playing maybe some of the smaller up-and-coming defense stocks, but that's really about it. Taking a look at the composite, off about 3.4%. NVIDIA was smoked. I mean, the entire Qs are really suffering here. But we are now sub 100 again on NVIDIA, off about 5.78%. It was very interesting to hear a lot of high-profile analysts basically saying that they weren't going to have any exposure, right? Risk exposure to tariffs, which I thought was very strange. I was kind of that for a small amount of time, where I was like, I guess the Chinese will still probably continue to buy the H20s and NVIDIA can go well. And then just seeing how it decayed, the discussions between the US and China, how that deteriorated, it was like NVIDIA is not in a good spot. And it came out today that I guess Huawei is now going to be competing against NVIDIA essentially in China. And I mean, NVIDIA is not going to sell to China regardless now, right? We're starting to see really how weird this trade war could go. So any company that has a lot of exposure to China, right? There's a potential that China will start, competing domestically, right? So that's very tough for a lot of these larger tech companies. Additionally, things like Amazon, we're actually starting to see a slowdown on CapEx and pausing some data center lease commitments. And again, this is because of the uncertainty, right? And I mean, we have a new kind of discussion going on now with Trump, publicly arguing with Powell, or at least saying negative things about Powell. If the central bank goes under control of the executive branch and the executive branch's control of monetary policy, you're going to see crashes in this market like you probably have never seen, because that's just not what the deal has ever been, since the inception of the current inception of the central bank. That's spooky stuff, right? I mean, Turkey dealt with that, right? Where Erdogan kind of fired his economic ministers and central bank guys. He's like, I'm just going to be in charge of all this. And they witnessed unbelievable hyperinflation of the lira, and they still struggle with it to this day. It is not a good plan, I don't think. And I believe that's kind of partly, what the market's kind of reacting to. I think a lot of this is just, again, as we said, with the lower VIX, an orderly sell-off. People are probably just trying to divest out of America for the time being until they can figure something out, right? So we'll see what happens with that. You have the Russell also off about 2.62%. The Dow Jones Industrial trading off nearly 1,200 points. Crude coming back down, but staying somewhat elevated at 62.84. Let's take a look what else we got. Gold contract is just moving it. Yeah, I was taking a look on the max duration chart. I mean, this is a pretty substantial move for gold. A lot of this is being driven by central banks. China, of course, is buying an unbelievable amount of gold. You could probably get some kind of stabilization in the movement of the price if China decides to cease doing that. Copper off 0.31%. Folks, stay right there. We'll be right back with Steve Rhodes, author of Mastering Probability. You do not want to miss this interview. Stay right there.